Good morning. This is 1/31/2015, and we're lucky to have Imogene Sue here. We're talking to her today, talking to her about she worked at multiple things, has multiple World War II experiences, worked at Republic Aviation, then the LST, and then worked in New York, and also Crane Depot and Crane Naval Depot in Indiana, and then ended up in Great Lakes. She had been married to two World War II veterans in her life, Kenneth Farmer and then Mr. Sue, both deceased. But we're going to let her talk sequentially about each one of these things she's done. First of all, Imogene, where were you born and what grade school and high school did you go to?
I was born in Crittenden County, Kentucky. Went to grade school at Bell's Mines. And then I went to Sturgis High School for 4 years, and that's where I graduated from.
Then how did you get to Evansville?
I came to Evansville to work during World War II.
At age 18? At what age were you?
I was 17 when I was trained for Republic Aviation, and then when I was at 18, then I went to their plant and worked.
Now, how did you find out about the job there, and how much more pay would you get there compared to working in Sturgis?
There was no jobs like that in Sturgis, but it was a war effort. We were working so the men could go to war and replacing them.
Where did you live when you were in Evansville?
I lived on the east side, and I had a roommate, a girlfriend that had worked. That we grew up together, and we roomed, and both of us worked at Republic Aviation.
Did you room in somebody's house or an apartment, or?
It was in a house with two. We had a bedroom, and we had to eat out most of the time because we didn't have those facilities.
And how did you get to work, and how far was work? A couple miles? Did you take the bus, or you get a car, or walk?
No, we didn't have cars. We took the bus.
And you take the bus. And how many hours shift did you have at Republic Aviation?
We worked 10 hours a day. Best I recall 7 days a week, but I'm off on that, I think.
That's all right. About 10 hours a day. And you just work 5 days a week?
5 days a week, yes.
And then Republic Aviation is a blue building on northern part of Evansville on Highway 41, and it was later taken over by International Harvester and then Whirlpool. Tell us what your job was. We made about 6,500 P-47s in that plant, which is very historic. It will be dedicated as the Warbird of Indiana in the year 2015. So very historic that we made 6,500 these planes, the only real Warbird factory in World War II in Indiana. So tell us a little bit, there were up to 35,000 people that worked at Republic Aviation when you include all the suppliers and other people that helped make planes. Multiple parts of that plane, but can you tell us, there were 10 lines in that factory that made 10 planes at a time. At the maturation time in late 44 and 45, they were putting out as many as 10 planes a day. What part of the plane did you help with?
In the tops.
The tops, so where the pilot would sit?
The fuselage, yes.
On the fuselage, up on the top. Tell us what you did.
I operated the overhead crane that carried the planes down the assembly line as they were finished to the next department.
So they make one part of the plane, then they move it down 20 or 30 feet, and then another part. So you help the crane move the plane down 20 feet or 30 feet up the assembly line. Is that what you did?
Yes, I did. I riveted it first when I first went in, and some lady drilled into my head and pulled my hair out. And then after that, they put me on the overhead crane.
Now riveting, it's called a Rosie riveter, very famous in World War II. If you see rivet guns and riveting on a plane, what would happen was there's always a woman or a person on the back side of the rivet holding. Were you on the back side or the front side?
I was on the front side.
On the front side, but somebody riveted your head or hair once, so they got you out of that.
They took me out, and that's when they put me on operating the overhead crane.
I see. And then the overhead crane, That's a pretty big crane. I mean, and you did it all by yourself, huh?
Yes, I did. I climbed a 50-foot pole up like a telephone pole up to get in it, and then I was swinging up there and carrying the planes down the line.
So the crane was suspended from the ceiling? Is that where the
Right.
crane was? And so it would just pick the whole plane up and move it down the line.
Right.
Okay, we're back to using those cranes, Imogene. You used a... so you'd climb up a 50-foot pole. Would you have there were steps for that pole that climb up to get to the crane?
Yes.
And the crane was suspended from the ceiling, and it would pick the plane up and move it all the way down its assembly line.
Right. To the next department.
Now, when it picked it up, when it got down to the end, it was pretty heavy by the time it got the engine in it. Was the engine in it already?
Oh, no.
There was an empty plane. The engine was the last part.
Right.
But an empty plane, and they would rivet and do different parts, and you would watch them. It was a little lighter till it got down to the end.
Right.
You lifted it all the way till it got the engine in it.
I didn't go all the way to the end. It was,
Halfway.
Halfway. Probably. It probably went. I probably went through two departments.
How much training did you get for that? About a week?
6 weeks, I believe.
6
it was.
weeks of
But
training.
I was trained before I was 18 because I had to wait.
To do riveting, but not to do cranes.
No.
That's pretty something for you.
I don't remember getting any training really. I was just put on it.
Now,
I sold war bonds out there too.
at the place, yes. Now, when you look at if you look at the history of Republic Air, there was a big issue about bathrooms there. They had to make women and men bathrooms. Can you tell us about that history at Republic Air? Do you remember any of that?
I don't remember that.
Yeah, because they had to separate them and upstairs, downstairs, and getting the plumbing there was quite a feat just for Republic Air. Was the building constructed when you were there totally roofed, or was it not even completed when you started working there?
I believe it was completed. It seemed like it was completed to me.
They started making from the south end and completed to the north end, and they were starting making planes in there before they even completed. Did you ever see the first plane completed?
No, I didn't.
Okay, that's just tremendous. Republic Aviation and LST Factory and Chrysler, where they made our bullets and refurbished tanks, will go down in history as the number one thing for Evansville for the last century and a half, and probably the next several centuries. And Imogene was a big part of that. Then she left there and went down to the LST, or sworn in at the LST. Tell us at age 19, November 6, 1943, you were sworn in. Tell us a little bit about that.
I was sworn in by a naval officer aboard the LST, and then I was
Into what service?
into the Waves Navy.
And so you'd been in Evansville about a year, and then you decided you wanted to be part of the Navy.
Yes, I did. I had two brothers that had gone in service, and I wanted to go in service too.
And so where did you go to boot camp, or did you have a boot camp?
Yes, Hunter College in New York.
In New York, yeah. That's a famous women's college in New York.
Yes, it
and
was.
A very historical college.
Yeah.
Is that in Long Island or on New York City?
I'm not sure now.
So then you were sworn in, you went to boot camp there for 6 weeks, and then you worked in New York City at that time. Can you tell us a little bit about what you did in New York?
I was in an outgoing unit before I was shipped to the crane operation.
I see. And then then you're in New York. Then you, here we are. This is about 43. You're in the Navy, and did you do anything for public relations or
Yes, I
anything?
did.
Can you tell us about public relations and what magazines you're in?
I was invited to the numerous events with the
Navy and
the celebrities in Evansville, the big name bands would invite the Navy's invite us to come to events that they were sponsoring.
And where were you stationed, in Evansville, or where were you stationed?
I was stationed in New York, and then I went to Crane, Indiana from there.
I see. How long were you stationed in New York?
I was 6 weeks training and 6 weeks outgoing unit.
At New York, and then
Yes.
you came back to Crane Naval Base in
Right,
in southern Indiana.
Right.
Tell us what you did at Crane Naval Base.
I worked for the Marines and security, interviewing people coming on the base for security purposes.
What kind of questions did you ask them?
I had to fingerprint them and ask all personal questions about what they were doing and what they were there for.
Find out they were spies or not, and
Right,
trying to just. And then if you didn't think somebody was right, who did you refer them to? Did you tell them your boss that this?
My commanding officer, he was a officer in the Marines.
How many people did not pass your scrutiny? Very many?
I don't remember because that would have been passed on to someone else.
I see. And then how many years did you work there, and how long did you stay at Crane Naval Base there, and then when did you get out of the Navy?
I was probably there better than a year. And then I was went to Great Lakes as an outgoing unit when it's close to the end of the war.
So, and then you went to Great Lakes and you got out of the service then?
Yes.
And then you came back to Evansville and lived the rest of your life, and you're in Evansville, Indiana right now?
Yes.
And can you tell us about
I lived in Memphis for a short time with my husband when he came back. He was going to art school in Memphis.
Let's tell us, we're going to go to your first husband named Kenneth Farmer. You were married in May 18th, 1942. And then tell us what happened, what he did in World War II, and then he reenlisted in Korean War, and tell us that he was an MIA.
He was in the Korean, in the World War II invasion of North Africa, Sicily, all the way through. And he was wounded and then sent back to the States. And he was discharged, but he had so many problems, just like a lot of the service people do today. And, of course, we didn't know what to do about it.
And so then he re-enlisted and went to the Korean War about 51 or 52, is that right?
That's right,
And then he
was an MIA.
And we've never found him. We still don't know anything about him.
Right.
And we lost him in 52 or 53?
Yes, he did. I had two fellows that came to visit me that was prisoners of war for 5 years, I believe it was, and they came back to see me to tell me the last days they saw him and what he was doing and what happened at that time.
He was a prisoner of war too.
Well, we never knew, know. And the government never knew.
I see. And then he was in Korea. We lost him in probably 1953 or so. He wasn't part of the Chosin Reservoir, was he?
Yes, I believe he was.
The Chosin Reservoir we were outnumbered by 1,000 to 10,000 or so.
I think that's where it happened at.
A lot of reserve units from Evansville. A reserve unit from Evansville went. There's lots of people in Evansville that were part of the Chosin Reservoir. It was probably one of the worst battles of the Korean War, worst of many, many wars, where it was probably 30 degrees below zero, and the Chinese and the Koreans surrounded a group of Americans. How the ones got out, we'll never know. And probably your first husband, Kenny, probably never got out, and maybe was a prisoner of war, but missing in action.
That's what I always felt like he was.
Then you had remarried to a person. Can you tell us about your second marriage? And who to?
Gilbert Sue. And he was a World War II veteran. He was in the Navy, and he had breast cancer, and one breast was removed before he came out, and the other one right shortly after he came out. And he lived with that all of his life, but he was a very good business person, and we built a good business, but then he died in '78.
What type of business did you have?
We had A1 Janitor Service and Supplies.
That's still here. That's still here in Evansville.
Yes, we have it. We were all over the United States, so we sent trucks out of here that went across all directions of the United States. We had offices in Florida. We had offices in Ohio.
Wow.
And
he was a World War II vet. And what part of the world did he serve in World War II?
In the Navy?
Yes. What part did he go to? Do you remember?
He was in some of the islands. I'm not sure now.
In the Pacific?
Yes.
I see.
But he was there for a long time.
On a ship, do you know?
And he was on ships, too.
Yeah. Now, I have Christina Raleigh here. Do you have any other questions to ask Imogene, Christina, that we may have missed?
I do. Imogene, your first husband in the Korean War, you said that you ran into somebody that had saw him when he was overseas. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Do you remember that?
that had saw him.
Yeah.
Saw Kenny Farmer, yes.
He had the two friends that came back. They were friends of his. One was from here.
Was his name?
Sullivan, Jack Sullivan, I believe was his name. And another one was from another area. But they both came to see me when they were released from service. When they were prisoners of war for 5 years.
Oh,
And came after that long a time to see me, which I appreciated.
wow.
And told me that the last they saw of him, he came back into the area. They were cooks or something, but Kenneth came back in and loaded up with ammunition and went back. And that's what last they saw of him.
Wow. Well, you've been a very big inspiration for us. You went on the World War II flight to the honor flight to Washington D.C. You looked at the Korean
It was something to see.
Namesake there, the Korean monument, and also the World War II. Appreciate you going, and appreciate you being a World War II veteran. Also, the spouse of 2 World War II veterans. Can you tell us what you think the significance of World War II and what you felt like at that time? Did you think Hitler, the Japanese, the Italians were going to win this war? As a youngster, you're only 17, working at Republic Air. Did you have any fear of us being taken over by another country?
No, I didn't. I had confidence in our country.
And when you saw the massive effort, you just saw part of it when you saw it at Republic Air, then you saw it on the LST, and then you saw it in New York City. I mean, you were a little girl from Sturgis, Kentucky. I mean, what did you feel like at that time to see such a big process going on? What were your thoughts at that time?
I just felt like I was honored to be part of it, to be able to take a part in being an effort.
And what do you think about our freedom in the United States? How important is that of freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of so many, many things that our young children have today? What do you think is important for them in the future to preserve this and cherish this, as I'm sure you do? Do you have any advice for the next generation?
Well, I have a lot of advice, but I'm not sure just how to pass it on, really.
And you've lived probably in the best time the United States has ever had, from 1924 till now we're 2015. The starting of the plane, the starting of the train had already been going, and you've seen spacecraft, you've seen landing on the moon, but you lived and were part of the biggest event of the 20th century, probably the next 2 or 3 centuries. What do you think about that for historical reasons, of how important our freedom is and how important the events of World War II are for us to remember?
I think it's very important. There's been so many lives given to preserve it. And it's very important. We should never forget it, what our country means to the world, not just to us, to the world.
Yeah, we're an example of freedom and trying to do the right ethical thing for the world today. Well, thank you very much, Imogene. Appreciate your time. And
it's been a privilege.
okay, thank you.